The Honor Magic V3 is not only the thinnest and lightest phone on the market, but it also packs plenty of impressive specs like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, a 5150 mAh battery with 66 watt supercharge, we got a super bright display with 5000 nits of peak brightness, and it's just launched with an unbelievable launch offer, so hit subscribe now and we'll check out what this thing can do. So the Honor Magic V3 actually launched yesterday, and I've been using this phone for a few weeks now, but I wanted to hold off on this video until we had the confirmed pricing, as I've reviewed phones on estimated pricing before, and they then turned out to be wildly different. But this time, we've not only got a great value launch price, but it also includes free gifts like the Bang & Olufsen HX headphones, which are valued at £549. But from the minute you pick up the Magic V3, you notice how light this phone is, coming in at just 226 grams, and its extra slim design is also very apparent with a thickness of just 9.2mm, which is very close to a standard phone now, and I have to say it feels like just holding a normal phone and not a folding phone, which does make it much easier and more comfy to hold. When it's unfolded, it's now only 4.35mm thick, and the one thing I would say is that the first time picking it up, I was a little bit worried about its durability, given that it feels so light and it's also very thin. But Honor are using a new special fiber for the body material, which is reportedly stronger than Kevlar and carbon fiber with a strength of 5,800 megapascals. And of course, I can't test this because I just don't have the equipment to test it, but I did drop it by accident and thankfully there's not a single mark on it. Now the external display gets a big upgrade to 5000 nits of peak brightness, and this is very apparent when you're out in the sun, and it makes it much easier to use on a hot sunny day. Now it's a 6.43-inch 120Hz LTPO OLED display, it's got a resolution of 2376 by 1060, and the glass is protected by Honor's nano crystal shield. Now again, I'm not going to scratch the display and test it, but hopefully Jerry Rig Everything gets his hands on one so we can see how that protection performs. Now it's also a nice size with the external display, and it's not as narrow as its competitors like the Z Fold 6. It's got a 21:9 aspect ratio, and its width just makes it much more comfortable to use as a normal phone, which I find myself using this display a lot. Now opening it up, we reveal the 7.92-inch foldable 120Hz OLED display. Now this one's got a peak brightness of 1600 nits, it's also got a resolution of 2344 by 2156, and this one's protected by Honor's super armored inner screen, but again it's not something that I can test the durability of. Now that being said, there's no marks on the screen from my 3 weeks of use so far, and the crease in the center of the display is also pretty good. Now even with light colors on the display, you can't see it when you're looking at directly head on, and it's only if you're viewing at an angle that you'll see it. And Honor have also tested the new Super Steel hinge to 500,000 folds, and this is typical usage for 13 years. Now both displays are great to use, they're fast and responsive as you'd expect from a modern smartphone, and it's also easy on the eye with 3840Hz PWM dimming for the internal display, and then 4320Hz for the external cover display, but personally I don't suffer with any eye strain, so I can't comment on how useful that is. Now over on the back, we've also got a nice simple design, but with a bold camera module at the top. It protrudes out the back of the rear panel, and it's an octagonal shape, and I have to say I quite like the simplistic and sleek design. Now inside the camera module, we've got a triple camera setup, which consists of a 50 megapixel primary camera with SMA stabilization. We've got a 50 megapixel periscope with 3.5 times zoom and optical stabilization, and we've then got a 40 megapixel ultra wide with optical stabilization. Now for the selfie cameras, both the internal and the cover display have a punch hole cutout with the same 20 megapixel sensor in each, but we'll get into the camera samples shortly. Now for those of you wanting to protect the Honor Magic V3, it also comes with a protective case with bumpers to also protect the display, and it's even got a built-in stand for those of you that are going to be watching media on it. Now as I said, the phone is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and it comes with 12GB of RAM and 512GB of storage, so as you'd expect, everything is fast, smooth and snappy, and it can pretty much handle anything you throw at it. Now for those of you concerned about synthetic benchmarks, I ran it through Geekbench 6 where it scores 2240 for single core and then 5405 for multi-core, so the single core score is good, and it's just a little bit behind on the multi-core performance when you compare it to things like the Fold 6 or the S24 Ultra, as they score around 6825 for multi-core, and I'm assuming the reason for this is differences in cooling, and they also use the overclocked version of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and that runs at the 4 CPU cluster at 3.4 GHz instead instead of 3.3, and it also runs the GPU at a higher clock speed as well. Now, of course, the multi-core performance is only going to help with processing tasks like rendering, etc. So for the day-to-day users, you're going to experience the same performance. When it comes to gaming, the Magic V3 is going to handle anything you throw at it exactly as you'd expect. Now, I spent some time playing Call of Duty Mobile and Asphalt on the Magic V3, and both of them played flawlessly. There were never any pauses or stuttering, and I was able to enjoy high quality at high refresh rates. And the great thing about the Magic V3 is you can play with the external display for a more compact experience, or you can open it up and play with the internal display, which just makes things much more fun and easier to see. And I found games like Warzone much easier on this larger display, although it's very hard to game while filming the phone. Now, I also ran the Magic V3 through 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme benchmark, and it got an overall score of 4,692 with an average frame rate of 28.1 frames a second. Now, next up, we got the camera performance. When it comes to foldable phones, they don't ever get the same level cameras as the latest flagships, and I assume that's down to internal space. But we do, however, get a good camera system on the Magic V3, and in my testing, I've been very happy with the photo and the video performance from the cameras. So if we start with the photos on the primary camera, you can see we get great photos, and these are all just point and click without any manual adjustments. We've got nice lighting and colors, and my only comment with the photos across all of the cameras is that they are a little bit heavy on the contrast, but that always seems to be the case with Honor. But it does make them very punchy photos, and judging by my previous camera tests, that seems to be what people want these days. But across all of the photos, we've got plenty of detail in both the highlights as well as the shadows, and it wasn't the sunniest of days, but as you can see, there's not really any clipping in the skies, and we still retain plenty of detail in the shadow. Now, the ultra-wide camera also does a great job, and it delivers the same good results, and if we run through similar shots with the ultra-wide camera, you can see great detail and nice colors, and again, it's just a little bit heavy on the contrast. When taking photos, there's also an option for a 2x zoom which delivers these photos here, but honestly, I would actually avoid using it. Now, I'm assuming it's cropping from the main sensor to get the 2x zoom, but it lacks sharpness and detail in comparison, and I would suggest that you just stick with the 1x lens and zoom in post, or if you need more zoom, bump it up to the 3.5x optical. So you can see here that unlike the 2x zoom, the periscope camera with the 3.5x zoom delivers a nice amount of detail in the highlights and the shadows. We've got nice sharp images, and overall they're just great photos, but again, they're just a little bit heavy on the contrast for my personal liking. Now, there's also a feature to automatically snap photos when there's some movement or action, and I tested this here, and of course it does work. It's just not something that I'm personally going to be using. And when it comes to the video, we also get great quality video from all of the cameras, and we of course get 4K at 60 frames a second, but I've been filming and switching between the cameras while filming, and all of them have worked well. We also get some good performance from the microphone, so we'll just check out the video samples now. So this is the rear camera, 4K, 60 frames a second. Just do some panning around. That's what it's going to look like. And the great thing about the rear camera is you can switch between the lenses while you're filming. So we've got 0.7 shot if I just pan around. Got one which we're already on. We've got the 2x. We just pan around again. And while we're looking into the distance, I switch to the 4x. Then of course you can manually zoom in more, so 10x is max zoom. And that's the quality we're going to get a 10x, we're trying to hold it steady. We switch back to 1. And then we'll just do a stabilization test. I'll put my bag on properly and just run forward. So that's what you can expect from the stabilization. Just have a second look at the video from the rear camera, and there's some big open space so we can have a look at the zoom. So that's 1x. That's 2x zoom. Swivel around, we'll focus on this building here. So that's at 4x zoom. Just trying to hold it steady, and then if you do end up moving, there's some movement. And then we'll go to the maximum 10x, we just pinch and zoom. Try and expose on that better. And that's 10x zoom. Now, of course, there's extra modes here as well, and the video is just going to be too long if I go through every single video mode, but I did test out some slow motion at 240 frames a second. Now, when it comes to the selfie camera, again, we get good photos, and to be honest, it's pretty much what I expected for both the internal and the external display, as they both use a 20 megapixel selfie camera, but as you can see here, we get good results. Now, when it comes to video, you are however restricted to 30 frames a second if you're filming in 4K, but you can get 60 frames a second if you drop down the resolution to 1080p, but we'll just take a look at the video samples from the selfie camera now. So this is the video from the selfie camera on the external display. Now, it's a 20 megapixel camera with an aperture of f2.2. It's currently in 4K, 30 frames a second. And on the zoom, it's at 0.8 times. You can change that from 1, 0.8, 1. So it's good that you can do that while you're filming as well. Wind's quite low today, but as you can see, there's a little bit of a busy road next to me. So we'll see how that comes out. If we just do some panning. Pan round, and then I'll just do a little jog so we can test the stabilization. And that's the quality you can expect from the selfie camera. Now, when it comes to the software side, we're running macOS 8.0.1, and as with many other phones out there, it's getting plenty of AI features to improve your day-to-day life and just make things easier, but to be honest, there's not really anything new. So we've got the Magic Portal, which debuted on the Magic 6 Pro, and it allows you to take text or images and drag them into other applications. So for instance, you might want to save it as a note, put it straight into Gmail to send it to someone, or if someone sent you an address, you can drag it straight into Maps and navigate there. Now, for images, we can also drag them into Notes, Gmail, and even search for things on eBay using the images. And now it does support a lot more apps than it did when it was initially released. But overall, it's a good feature, and I'm sure this is something that Honor are going to continue to build on with future updates. Now, we've also got AI features thanks to Google Cloud, so that's things like Magic Eraser, which I'm sure most of you have seen by now, and you just highlight what you want to remove from a photo and it's going to use generative AI to fill it. We've also got improvements to Honor's notes with things like voice to text, as well as live translation. Live translation worked well in my short testing, and you can look at one side of the screen each to actually get it translated, but I would have thought a much better idea would be to utilize the internal display for one of the translations and have it translate to the external display for the person you're speaking to read, so hopefully that's something that Honor could implement in the future. Now, general use of the OS is good though, and it's what you'd expect from an Android phone. macOS is continually improving, and I like the default layout with all of my apps crammed into the main page, but if you don't like that and you want it a bit more simplistic, you can of course customize it. Now, there's a little bit of what you call bloatware with pre-installed apps like AliExpress and Booking.com, but thankfully you can just uninstall the ones that you don't want. Now, for those of you that haven't used macOS, you also get plenty of customization in the settings menu, and you've got things like your home screen, lock screen, fonts, icons, and you can even change the always on display. And there's also a special theme section that's going to help you quickly change everything. You've of course got all the usual settings to change from. We now also get Honor's Magic Capsule, and this is pretty much the same as the Dynamic Island really, and it makes use of the punch hole at the top center, and it gives you more information from apps and lets you select things within those apps without actually opening the apps, and it's especially useful for things like your alarm clock, so you can just snooze or cancel straight away. Honor have also promised 4 years of OS updates along with 5 years of security updates, and this is going to help with the longevity of the phone. And while it's not quite the 7 years of OS updates that Samsung offers, it's a good offering and they're on the right track. Now, powering this all is a 5150 mAh battery, which supports 66 watt fast charging when using wired, and then 50 watt when using wireless charging. And in terms of connectivity, we've got Bluetooth 5.3, Wi-Fi 7, and NFC. Now, we've placed a link to the Magic V3 down in the description below, so you can go ahead and check it out now. And if you use the discount code AV3EB300, it's just £1,399, and it also comes with plenty of free gifts, including Honor's Magic Pen, which works on both displays. We get the 66 watt supercharger, and then as I said at the start, you also get Bang & Olufsen HX headphones, and these are valued at £549. And if that wasn't enough, you get 6 months of screen protection for both the external and the internal display, and all of that for £1,399. It just makes this a no-brainer if you need a folding phone. Now when you compare it to something like the Z Fold 6, there are pros and cons, but it beats it in so many areas like external display brightness and overall form factor, and it's just crazy how thin and light the phone is. Now at its full price of $1,799, it becomes a much tougher decision, which I'd be leaving down to you guys to decide, but for such a low launch price on top of all of those free gifts, it's worth acting quickly. It's a great folding phone that's not only broken records in terms of its size, weight and dimensions, but it also performs well with good photography to match. Now when it comes to the unboxing, if we open it up, we first get the Magic V3 with its protective film around it. We've then got the SIM removal tool along with a protective case for the phone which slides onto the back, and we've also got a bumper to protect the front. Next up we've got the 66-watt supercharger, and then finally we've got the USB-C cable. Now hopefully I've covered everything in today's video, but of course if there's anything I've missed or you've got any questions at all, then just ask them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with the latest tech.